Welcome everybody to September's webinar with Sounds of Intent. We had a break over the summer and I hope you all had a chance to have a break too. So thank you for joining us live and also for everybody who is going to watch this on demand. I'm really excited about this afternoon's webinar because it's a project that we've been working on for a really long time and it's great to see it to come to fruition. So I'm really delighted that David Rees, who's the Chief Exec of Merton Music Foundation, has joined us to talk about the Mini Musicians Project. And so we'll be doing a bit of a three-way presentation with Adam, David and myself. Any questions that you've got, please send them through to myself, sarah.mccarthy@roehampton.ac.uk, or direct to David. And we make sure when we'll circulate the recording that we'll put our emails in and you can contact us directly. So without further ado, David, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here. Hopefully you can see a lovely picture of some children playing the melodica. So I'm here to talk to you about the Mini Musicians program that Merton has run in partnership with a number of fantastic organisations over the last 2 years. So a little bit of background from me. Mini Musicians, as I say, it's a collaborative effort. We've been working, Merton Music Foundation has been the lead delivery partner. The project was funded through Merton Council, and we've worked with University of Roehampton, Sounds of Intent, Trinity College London, and Sing Up to deliver the programme. It's a really ambitious 2-year project. So what was it? It started in September 2023, and it ran all the way through to July 2025, funded by the council. And we were looking particularly at early childhood musical development, and our key cohort was the year 1 group that went from year 1 into year 2 during the period of the project, so kind of key stage 1. We also operated in early years settings as well, but it was very much key stage 1 and early years was our focus. The project came about through a needs analysis that MMF conducted locally. So we looked at primary music specialists and how many we had in the borough, or how many we didn't have in the borough, as a bit more accurate. We also looked at the spread of instrumental engagement across the borough. So Merton is a borough that is very much skewed down the middle. Half of the borough have much more access to things like musical lessons, and the other half don't. It's very much a divide in terms of financial barriers. And from looking at that, we identified that putting high quality specialist-led music teaching early in the school year that worked towards a kind of a Wicked style of whole class instrumental learning was what we wanted to do. Because we had the funding behind us, we were able to do half class delivery in our target year groups. So that's the year 1 children going to year 2, all learn in half class groups, and they had a 2-year progressive scheme of learning. So we started with them actually in the January of 2024, so spring term of that year, and then we followed them through 5 terms and planned those 5 terms out sequentially, working towards the end goal of them learning to play the melodica. This happened in 10 Merton primary and special schools, so it was a fully inclusive programme. The same aims and objectives were applied across both special and mainstream schools. And we also worked in some additionally resourced provision. And we adapted the delivery and the teaching methods in order to enable that. So it was general musicianship teaching and classroom instrumental learning on the melodica. Alongside this, working with the team at Roehampton and led by Adam, we conducted a research study of those pupils in year 1. And there were about 230 of those children who were part of the intervention group that we studied. So we followed those pupils along. And Adam will tell us a bit more about that later. And there were another 70 or so children who acted as a comparison group, so children who weren't part of the programme, who we also studied to be able to compare like for like. So around 300 participants in this study, which is, I'm told, pretty significant, quite a huge study. So we were aiming to address need, and because we had all of this data, we also took the opportunity to enter those children for a Trinity Awards and Certificate in Musical Development, because the whole programme was built around the Sounds of Intent. So we started off early meetings with myself and Adam and our lead curriculum practitioner, Julie Luck, who wrote the scheme of learning. We sat down and we gave ourselves a set of principles to work from. The first top top of the list had to be joy. It's a value that MMF holds, and it was something that we all felt was really important, that children should really enjoy what they're doing. We took a sound first approach, musical notation and kind of theoretical language very much coming second after pupils' musical experience. And we recognised that children were bringing a wealth of musical knowledge and experience into the classroom. The maximise value principle we'll expand on later as Adam discusses some of the research methodology that we used and I talk about the scheme of learning. And then that role modelling. So right from the start, right from the first lesson in January 2024, children were being exposed to the melodica. Their teacher was using it as if it was just a normal thing to do, to play the melodica. And so that kind of role modelling and all of the adults involved in the project, as is the case in good Wicket delivery, they were actively involved, learning alongside the young people. So for those of you kind of interested in this sort of thing, here's a sort of idea of how we broke down the day in a school. We had to do this bespoke for each of the 10 schools to meet their playtimes, break times, start of day, end of day, to work around phonics and all that sort of thing. So we had 5 tutors delivering who were all trained up. And each tutor went into each of their schools for a full day. So EYFS and Key Stage 1 got a full day of specialist provision as part of the programme. So it's half class groups in year 1, 45-minute sessions, and then we fit everything else around that, the early years. And we also incorporated something that we called the Big Sing, which brought all of the children together at the end of the day just to sing for the joy of singing. So in most schools, that still left us with a little bit of time to play with, because we worked in quite a lot of one formentary schools in this project. So in the timetable, we still had a little bit of time to play with, and we called that small group intervention. And that time was completely flexible. There was no kind of pre-directed thing that the tutors had to do at that time. It was for the tutor to decide how to use it. So many used it to intervene and support pupils with additional needs, either to pre-teach next week's lesson or just to support them to catch up with the previous. And sometimes it was used to stretch more able pupils as well. Or if we found that a pupil, perhaps because of their additional needs, wasn't able to engage in a whole class setting, they could have a smaller group or one-to-one session as well. So that was really kind of unique to have that flexibility in the timetable that the tutor could lead. And because this was all being fully funded, it didn't cost the schools a single penny. I had quite a lot of leeway with the schools to kind of enforce that the music took priority over other timetabling considerations. So that's what it looked like in the schools on a day-to-day basis. I mentioned my colleague Julie Luck, who devised our scheme of learning, and I've just kind of put a few images on the screen to give you an idea that it was a bright, colourful, engaging scheme suitable for the age group. We used chime bars, progressing onto glockenspiels, progressing onto melodicas over the 5 terms. And we used a consistent colour coding scheme throughout the entire programme of delivery. So the chime bars matched the colour code of the colour-coded glockenspiels. We had some stickers that could be used on the non-colour-coded and glockenspiels and the melodicas as well. And that was a kind of a differentiation scaffolding technique. Some children had it, some children didn't. The thinking behind the melodica was that it's a very visual instrument. It's quite an inclusive instrument. It builds very nicely from the glockenspiel. And we also had the option in, for example, the special school we were working with, where some pupils struggled to blow and play at the same time. We had the option of using little digital keyboards. So they're all accessing the same learning, but just in a differentiated way that works for them. One of I mentioned it before, the maximised value principle. For much of the project, not exclusively, but for much of what we taught, we adopted a fixed DOE approach. It's quite counterintuitive to how a lot of early years teaching happens, where you might throw the tonic around. For a number of the pieces the children learned, they only ever learnt it, whether they were singing or playing, they only ever learnt it in a consistent key, usually the key of C, because that works quite nicely on the instruments that we were using. So that meant the first time they learnt to sing it, we ensured that we had a starting note and we learnt it in C. And every time afterwards we did so. And so when they reached the instrument, the theory was there was less unlearning they needed to do in order to transpose what they had gathered in their musical ear onto the instrument. And that's part of what the study will hopefully tell us whether or not that was successful. We also worked really closely with Merton School Improvement Team and their oracy lead. So Merton has done a lot of work on developing an oracy package for schools. One of the things we discovered, being a music teaching background myself, I'm not as familiar with the wider curriculum, and we realised that once you get past the kind of early years foundation stage, there's not a lot of explicit oracy teaching or assessing in schools, which was a bit of a surprise, given that there's quite a body of research that shows how oracy skills then lead towards success in later life. So we had a big focus on oracy. We framed our end of project festival around the idea, sing out your story, and giving children a voice. I penned a piece of music called The Power of My Voice, that was our celebration piece. And we also used explicit oracy teaching strategies as part of our music teaching. So we had a kind of agreed code of conduct about how we would use oracy in our teaching. We had some key strategies and techniques that the teachers were all trained to use that was part and parcel of the delivery. So it was building on that idea that musical sound precedes speech and language. It's, we pick it up in the womb as we hear it in utero, and then that then forms the building blocks of speech and language. So that was a theme we were really keen to pick up on, particularly because in our needs analysis, what head teachers told us was that children were turning up to school with lower and lower and lower levels of school readiness. So they hadn't developed that speech and language, they hadn't developed that conversational skill. In many cases, they hadn't even developed toileting skills, that sort of thing. And I think that was a bit of a COVID hangover that we were seeking to address. So that's Mini Musicians delivery in a nutshell. I'm going to hand over to Adam just to talk us through the research study and the methodology that was used there.
Thanks so much, David. And just to sort of say what a great pleasure it was to do the study, and we're still analysing a lot of the data, which we certainly have a great deal of, and it's amazing actually working with you, David, and your team and the schools, because everyone really engaged with it. The thing is, to do a research study, you need to be quite specific about the way that things are assessed and the way things are done. And it was fantastic that everyone really got their heads around that. So we were lucky having a nice large group in the intervention group, which over 200 children. And we also needed a comparison group, and we got a couple of schools there. That meant that we could actually, without causation is very difficult, but we could certainly have a correlation between the work that we were doing in music, looking at their musical development and also their wider development, and also to compare that with a group that didn't have the particular activities that the children in the intervention group had. We used the Sounds of Intent framework to frame the activities, but also to frame the assessments. And we were looking at Sounds of Intent levels 3, 4, and 5. So 3 is pattern makers, 4 is motif makers, and 5 is music makers. And we had a fair spread of those across the groups. There was a lot of demographic information we're able to get. We're still sifting through that, I think it's true to say, and also academic attainment and attendance data as well. So all of this is going to go into a giant thing. Well, we might do it, and there's various programs you can use, but what we really want to see is, are there particular factors that had an impact on children's musical and wider development? I think we'll probably be publishing that towards the end of this term, I think, David, and I'm sure it will appear in fingers crossed. I've got my fingers crossed behind my back, actually. Yeah, there'll be lots of work coming out of it, and I'm sure David's going to say at the end, we really want to share some of the findings that we've got to help other people who want to do a similar thing. So David mentioned that we were quite strict about some of the materials that were taught. The idea being that to maximize value, nothing was wasted. So the songs that children learned, they subsequently then played on the chime bars, on the glockenspiels, and on the melodicas. And the point was that because they learnt them at a particular pitch, it meant that those particular notes were in their long-term memory when they came to play their instruments. And this was part of the research project. We didn't know if it would actually work or not, but the initial results are really fantastic. So we're very pleased.
you didn't tell me you didn't know if it was going to work or not when we started.
That's true. I didn't, David. Yeah.
You found that out recently.
Yeah. But I'm, yeah, yeah. What can I say? Anyway, here's a song. Here's one of the songs.
I can sing this song. I can sing along. I can sing along.
Great. We probably don't need to play all three songs, do we, David? They got more complex as they went through.
I do a snippet of the last one so you get an idea of
they increased complexity.
First one. There's some small leaps in the second one, and then by the last one.
Dramatic.
Oh, apologies.
We are singing with the music, joining in. When we hear the song start, we begin. But when it stops, we stop too. Listen all around, not a sound.
Yeah. So that was quite a lot more challenging, obviously.
Apologies, I lost all control there. What's happening?
There we go. So we wanted to make sure the assessments were done consistently. So we had a colleague, Hannah, produce a number of videos for us that the children, they would play to the children on a computer one-to-one. And the children responded to Hannah's requests to do certain things. And we videoed the children doing their activities. And then we've had people coding the results. I should just say in parentheses that we're currently working on an automated version, which hopefully should be piloted by the end of this term, which will enable all schools to do a baseline music assessment through playing a musical game on a computer for 10 minutes, which will be really cool. Anyway, here's what it looks like at the moment. Here's Hannah doing the clapping.
Let's play some musical games. I'll go first, then you copy me. Are you ready? Here we go.
There we go. Dead easy. The next one, a bit harder.
Let's play a game with our voices. I'm going to sing and wave. I'll go first, then you copy me. Are you ready? Little waves like this.
And so on. So there are about 15 of these activities. I think it's true to say that when we first made the videos, we wondered if it was a bit twee, but actually watching the children answering Hannah back in a nice way, it was very touching. And now I think we're going to have to produce Hannah, aren't we, David? And schools. They want to know who this person is who lives in their computers. Right, and here's an example of how it went.
So this is from the first two. So we did 4 of these assessments with every child, and this is the first one and the second one of the same child.
Do you remember I Can Sing?
Pide si pide
Okay.
el I can sing.
I can sing. No recuerdo.
¿No? No recuerdo. Si quieres, pues.
Some songs.
Unas canciones.
Do you remember I Can Sing?
Sí.
Can you sing it for me?
I can sing the song. I can sing along. I can sing along.
Great. And so I think she was a Spanish-speaking girl. Is that right, David? Yeah. So it was interesting that in the few months between the assessments, she clearly, her English had come on a lot. But it was nice to think that the songs played a part in that. And you'll notice that she was within a semitone of the correct pitch as well, which was quite pleasing. Right, and then we moved on to the melodica. And the key thing we wanted to know was whether the children could hear the songs in their heads before they played them. And so Hannah did a number of games with the children, first of all with her hands obscured, and then playing with the hands visible if the children couldn't manage to copy her without looking at her hands. I think the second one's a video, isn't it, David?
No, I took the videos out for time,
Okay.
but this was in the second year of delivery. So the children are now in year 2. And we do have a little video here of when we were trialing these out before we started doing the assessments in year 2.
Yeah.
So
Here we go.
Now it's time to play your melodica. Are you ready?
Yep.
Listen carefully, then copy me. Your turn.
What note was it?
Have a guess.
very good.
Magic.
You got the right one.
He did. So, I mean, that was the whole point of what we were trying to do. We're trying to build the children's inner hearing, their musical ear from the inside. And then we move on to representing what they can hear through notation, etc. Then we have another video performing.
Yes. So later in the same session, the child was asked if he could play one of the 3 songs without any kind of, he'd never had the chance to play it on the melodica before. He was just asked if he could give it a go.
Do your best. It doesn't matter if it goes a bit wrong.
Wow, well done you. You sang it.
Magic. Very proud. I was in the session. I was very pleased and proud of the children. Well done. And then we got Sarah has done a lot of work as well particularly on the feedback side of things. And I think you just got some data in, haven't you, Sarah?
Yeah, so we sort of ahead of the quantitative data that we're analysing, we've done some work looking at feedback from the practitioners, the teachers and the TAs, and also the pupils who've been involved in the programme. And we're wrapping that together in some case study research. And these are just some highlighted quotes of some of the takeaways that we've got through those interviews. And I think overall it's worth saying that I guess there are a number of themes that have come out. One is that it's far more, or the experience for everybody seems to have been far more wide-reaching than just musical attainment. So there's been lots of feedback around the structure of the programme has allowed all children to participate, some with support within the sessions, and also children having support outside of the sessions. And that's really enabled it to be fully inclusive, which is obviously one of the key aims for Sounds of Intent. And that's led to a number of unexpected outcomes. And practitioners, both music practitioners and education practitioners, have told us about children who are potentially non-speaking in class, but through meaning musicians have been able to use their voice during singing, and also how that's led to potentially more verbalization in playground, not necessarily in classrooms, but they're starting to see children's confidence build. Similarly, there's been feedback around one particular school I went to, their perception, and this will be interesting to look at the data as we do the quant analysis. Their perception is that they've never, the programme itself has encouraged children to develop their oracy skills, that it's allowed them to develop their confidence, and that has translated into other lessons, and they have had their strongest, I know they don't necessarily need to do their Key Stage 1 SATs, but they did kindly do those for our project, and they were their best results they've ever had, and they were really crediting that back to to the program. So that's very exciting, and we look forward to.
I was very pleased with that result.
very exciting.
Having a head teacher tell you it was their best sats ever, I think it's a good result.
We'll see how that comes out in the quant analysis. But these were just some quotes we picked out. So one music practitioner is talking about how they can't, but now that they have used this program, that they can't really see themselves teaching Key Stage 1 music any other way, and also that they've got higher expectations of what children at that age can achieve, which I think is quite interesting. I think David talked earlier about, one of the things that we've observed is either lower attendance for children, and actually it looks like the Mini Musicians programme has been a key motivator for some children who are struggling to get into school, but it's a massive appeal, a really sort of positive part of their day, which is great. And again, the same practitioner talking about, obviously their music skills have improved, but also their concentration, attention, impulse control, which is fantastic to see. And then the scheme was also deployed in a special school, and also an alternative resource provision within a mainstream school. And in talking to those practitioners, I think what was really great to hear was that the programme could adapt to anybody's needs. So the way the programme was structured, the ability for children to join the programme where they are, rather than just being forced into a certain level, meant that it was broken down really, really well for the way that those children needed to interact. And also that, I think this person had previously been a music lead, and actually this was a very different way of approaching music teaching, which they really appreciated. So yes, there'll be more to come, but those were some initial sort of.
Yeah, big thanks to Sarah for getting all of that wonderful feedback. And I think, so to summarise, what we did was we just went and taught music well, and it wasn't necessarily rocket science. It was very, very well planned and very, very well sequenced. Julie put together this amazing scheme, and then underpinning it all with the sounds of intent, we had the inclusive assessment built in from the start. And then because of the funding that we had available, we were able to deliver it in a way that normally we wouldn't have the luxury of that, those small groups and the time to spare. So seeing as I had 2.5 terabytes of video data of children doing musical assessment activities, thanks to Adam, we took the opportunity to use that as evidence to enter 230 children for an award and certificate in musical development. So that was across both mainstream and special schools that we did that. And we just used the video evidence that we had and some very clever spreadsheety analysis that our research assistant undertook of the data that we had mainly from the third assessment point. So this is the largest cohort ever to be put forward for the awards and certificates in musical development. It's a relatively new inclusive exam based on the Sounds of Intent that Trinity have rolled out. And as a result, all of the tutors that delivered Mini Musicians are now also ACM and the assessors, and MMF is now a validated centre. So we've started to enter our own pupils as well as a result of this. So there's been a nice little legacy off the back of that, and it was a real privilege actually driving around in July with 250 certificates and handing them over to the school and seeing the excitement on the faces when they realized it was it was a real proper certificate with a shiny star on it and everything. So it was really, really lovely. So where does this go? What's the legacy? We've agreed with Merton Council a funding period of another year for a legacy programme with 2 strands. So 6 of the 10 pilot schools from the original project are now continuing for a year in a professional development programme. So we've employed 4 days a week a lead practitioner, somebody who delivered the Mini Musicians pilot, to go into those 6 schools and work on a fortnightly rota alongside teachers in Key Stage 1 and EYFS and teach them how to deliver the Mini Musicians scheme to their classes in their setting. So we've had to adapt it a bit. We're going to be working in whole classes now. Not all of the schools necessarily will have, actually these 6 schools do, but not every school that accesses the Mini Musicians scheme will have access to melodicas. So we're broadening that out. And that practitioner will take the model of a delivery together one week, then they leave for a week, and the next week the teacher tries to replicate what they saw the week before, and then they come back and they build on it. And as we go through into spring term, our practitioner will do less and less delivery and more observation, and might even sometimes not come in and instead come and work with the teacher on their PPA, for example, and help them plan their lesson for next week. And then by summer, what we're anticipating in most schools, most contexts, most practitioners, is that the teachers are delivering and the practitioner is feeding back and observing and being a kind of a peer mentor. So we're hoping that by the time she leaves the schools at the end of this academic year, they are then in a position to carry on delivering mini musicians themselves. Alongside that, we're bringing 4 new schools onto the programme on a 1-year version of the project. So focusing on the first year of delivery, the general musicianship, not moving on to the melodicas just yet. And those schools, we've been able to leverage the capital grant for musical instruments to buy equipment and instruments that they need in order to deliver that. And we've got the same specialists that delivered the first programme going into these schools. The only difference is we don't now have to conduct a huge, thankfully, huge research study alongside it. So we're just going in and doing the teaching. The scheme of learning that's been delivered is in the final process of being adapted so that it can be accessed freely by anyone. So we worked really closely with Sing Up, and a lot of the music in the scheme of learning is Sing Up music, and it's really fantastic. It links beautifully to the learning objectives, but we recognise not every single school in the country will have Sing Up, and we want every school in the country to have mini musicians. So we're making an adapted version that if you don't have Sing Up, here's some alternatives that you can find on YouTube or in the public domain. We're also adapting that planning on the assumption that it will be delivered by a normal non-specialist classroom teacher who maybe can keep a pulse and possibly can sing Happy Birthday in tune. That's the sort of level that we're aiming the planning at. So we've realised there are quite a lot of, because it was being delivered by specialists, there's a lot of assumptions in the planning that now need to be addressed, and we need to put provision around. So that's just going to go on our website probably half term, I think, or definitely by the end of term, and it will just be free for anyone to download, both versions, the specialist Sing Up version and the non-specialist version. And then, as Adam mentioned earlier, we're working now I can't remember who's on this. Sounds of Intent, Roehampton, Merton Music Foundation, and a professor from Anglia Ruskin. No, where's he from?
Yeah, Angela Ruskin.
Yeah. Great, Anglia Ruskin. We're working on developing a sort of AI version of the assessment tool. So something that, in the long term, if we can get it to work, will just sit inside a web browser or an app on an iPad. You'd point it at the child, Hannah would come up and say, sing this, and then it would interpret the child's responses and tell you what sounds of intent level they're currently working at, and then potentially signpost you to the relevant resources to support that child. So a baseline assessment tool that could be used in any school, any context. And that is Mini Musicians.
Yeah.
Thank you, David, for that rattling through that vast amount of content. It's a fantastic programme, and it's been a real privilege to be part of the research study that's run alongside it.
Just to chip in, I thought it was, because we've been talking, Sophie's gone now from Birmingham, but thinking of starting whole class instrumental tuition earlier at Key Stage 1 rather than Key Stage 2. And all the evidence is that the earlier you start doing stuff with kids, the quicker they'll learn. You have to think perhaps with more ingenuity about how to engage them and how to present stuff, but just presenting music as music and getting them to love the experience, I think, was a major force in the success of the thing, with wonderful early years and reception and Key Stage 1 practitioners who really engaged the children. And the other thing is, I thought the lovely thing from the finding was that people just realised how able musically young children are, which is a key message from Sounds of Intent, that children are much more able than we often treat them in terms of what they understand musically. Basically, by the time you're 5, your musical brain is pretty much intact. All the rest of it, as I say to my piano pupils, is just learning to twiddle your fingers in time. But your brain can process music perfectly well, and you can sing and dance and clap and learn to play instruments. So I think that ambition is a key thing, don't you, David, that hopefully others will pick up on.
Usually, and echoed in my experiences both as a classroom music teacher in my former days and as a parent of said aged children, very much so.